Joe Jackson stood frozen in the hallway at 2:47 a.m., his hand still on the doorknob. The sound coming from the basement was impossible. His 6-year-old son was supposed to be asleep. But that voice, those footsteps, that rhythm, Michael was practicing, and he'd been doing it for months without anyone knowing. October 12, 1964. Gary, Indiana. 2300 Jackson Street. The Jackson family home was small, 3 bedrooms for 9 people, thin walls, everybody heard everything. Or so Joe thought, but that wasn't even the shocking part. The real story had started 6 months earlier, and what Joe was about to discover would change everything he thought he knew about his youngest son. Let me tell you. April 1964. Michael Jackson was 6 years old. His older brothers, Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine, had been rehearsing as the Jackson brothers for a year. Joe pushed them hard. 2 hours after school, 3 hours on weekends, discipline, repetition, perfection. Michael would sit on the basement steps and watch, his small legs dangling, his eyes tracking every move. "Can I practice with you?" Michael would ask. "You're too young," Joe would say. "When you're older." But Michael didn't want to wait. Katherine Jackson noticed something strange in late April. Michael was exhausted during the day. "Baby, are you sleeping okay?" she asked one morning. "Yes, Mama," Michael said, rubbing his eyes. Katherine watched him at the breakfast table, dark circles under his eyes, moving slower than usual. But there was something else, something in the way he held himself. A quiet determination. She'd seen that look before. In Joe, when he was working double shifts at the steel mill to feed the family. In herself, when she stayed up sewing clothes so her children would look presentable. It was the look of someone carrying a secret mission. "Michael, honey," she said softly. "Whatever you're doing, just be careful, okay?" Michael looked up at her. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Katherine knew. Her baby was chasing something, something bigger than sleep, bigger than rest. She didn't stop him because she understood. But he wasn't sleeping. He was waiting. Every night, Michael would lie in bed until he heard his father's snoring. Then he would slip out of bed, tiptoe down the hallway, and descend into the basement. The basement was unfinished, concrete floor, a single bare bulb, the space where his brothers practiced during the day. Michael would turn on the record player, volume barely audible, and he would practice. Not just practice. He would study. He'd memorize every step Jackie made, every spin Jermaine did, every hand gesture Tito used. Then he'd try them himself, again and again and again. If he fell, he'd get up without making a sound. If he missed a step, he'd restart from the beginning, over and over. The concrete floor was cold against his bare feet. His pajama shirt would get soaked with sweat, but Michael never stopped. He'd watch himself in the reflection of the basement window, adjusting his posture, perfecting his angles, his small hands mimicking every gesture he'd seen his brothers make. Sometimes he'd practice a single move for 30 minutes straight. The same spin, the same slide, the same head tilt, until it felt natural, until it felt like breathing. 2 hours every night, sometimes 3. "Smooth," Michael would whisper to himself. "Make it smooth." He was 6 years old, teaching himself to be perfect while everyone slept. By July, something changed in Michael's daytime behavior. When his brothers practiced, Michael wouldn't just watch anymore. He'd mouth the words silently. His body would sway in perfect time. "That boy's got it in his blood," Katherine told her neighbor. "He knows those routines better than my older boys." Joe noticed too, but he didn't know why. "Michael," Joe said one afternoon, "you paying attention when your brothers practice?" "Yes, sir." "Good. You watch and learn. Maybe next year you can join them." Michael nodded, but inside he was thinking, "I'm already better than them." August 1964. Michael had been secretly practicing for 4 months. One evening, Jermaine hurt his ankle playing basketball. The Jackson brothers had a performance scheduled for the following weekend at a local talent show. "We need a replacement," Jackie said. Joe looked at Michael. "You think you can learn Jermaine's parts in 1 week?" Michael's heart raced. "Yes, sir." "All right. We start tomorrow. I'm warning you, it's hard work. Long hours." Michael nodded. trying not to smile. The next day, rehearsal started. Joe put on the music, explained the first routine, showed Michael where to stand. Now watch your brothers, then we'll teach you step by step. The music started, and Michael did something that made everyone in the basement stop moving. He performed the entire routine. Perfectly. Every step, every spin, every gesture, without a single mistake. Jackie's mouth dropped open. Tito stopped mid-move. Jermaine, sitting with his ankle elevated, stared in disbelief. Joe stopped the music. "How did you just do that?" "I watched," Michael said quietly. "You watched? Once? Just now?" Michael didn't answer. Joe restarted the music. A different song, a routine they'd been working on for weeks. Michael performed it flawlessly. Joe's expression changed from confusion to suspicion. "Michael, have you been practicing when I'm not looking?" "No, sir," Michael said, which was technically true. He practiced when everyone was sleeping. Joe ran through 5 more routines, songs they'd learned months ago, complex choreography that took his older sons weeks to master. Michael knew every single one. "This doesn't make sense," Joe said. "Nobody learns this fast. Nobody." That night, Joe couldn't sleep. Something wasn't adding up. At 2 a.m. he heard a sound, faint, coming from downstairs. Joe got out of bed, walked quietly down the hallway, descended the stairs. The basement light was on. And there was Michael, 6 years old in his pajamas, practicing in near-complete silence. Joe stood in the doorway and watched. Michael was running through a routine Joe had taught the older boys just that afternoon, but Michael wasn't just copying it. He was perfecting it, adjusting angles, smoothing transitions, adding small flourishes that made the moves look more professional. Joe's heart started pounding. He'd been pushing his older sons for a year, drilling them, correcting them, demanding more. But this was different. Michael was pushing himself, harder than Joe ever could, with a precision that couldn't be taught, a dedication that came from somewhere deep inside. Joe watched Michael's feet. Perfect placement, every single time. He watched Michael's face, complete concentration, lost in the music only he could hear clearly. Joe had never seen anything like it. Michael finished the routine, caught his breath, started it again from the beginning. This is when Joe should have said something, should have told Michael to go to bed. But Joe Jackson froze, because he realized what he was watching. This wasn't a child playing at performance. This was pure instinct, natural genius, the kind of dedication you can't teach. Michael had been doing this for months, every single night, while everyone slept, no one pushing him, no one demanding it, just Michael and his own drive for perfection. Joe watched for 20 minutes. Michael never noticed him. Finally, Joe cleared his throat. Michael spun around. His face went pale. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I couldn't sleep and I just wanted to—" "How long?" Joe interrupted. "What? How long have you been doing this?" Michael's voice was barely a whisper. "Since April." Joe did the math. 5 months, every night. That was over 300 hours of practice, self-taught, self-motivated, while everyone thought he was sleeping. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You said I was too young. I didn't want you to think I was being disobedient." Joe walked into the basement, sat down on the bottom step, gestured for Michael to sit next to him. For a moment, neither spoke. Just father and son, in a cold basement, at 3 a.m. "You scared?" Joe asked finally. Michael nodded. "I thought you'd be mad." "I should be. You disobeyed the rules, stayed up when you should be sleeping." Michael's eyes filled with tears. "But I'm not mad," Joe continued. "I'm impressed. You know why?" Michael shook his head. "Because you wanted it more than I could make you want it. That's rare, Michael. Most people only work hard when someone's watching. You worked hard when no one was watching. That's the difference between good and great." Joe put his hand on Michael's small shoulder. "Show me what else you've been working on." For the next hour, in the middle of the night, Michael Jackson showed his father everything he'd taught himself, every routine his brothers knew, plus variations he'd created on his own, moves he'd seen on television and adapted, steps he'd invented in his head and brought to life. When Michael finished, he was breathing hard, waiting for punishment. Instead, Joe said 4 words that changed Michael's life. "You're the lead singer." Michael's eyes went wide. But Jackie's good. You're something else, something I've never seen before. Joe stood up. From now on, no more secret practice. You rehearse with your brothers, front and center, lead vocals, lead dancer. This is your group now. Really? Really, but Michael? Joe's voice got serious. What you just showed me, that dedication, that drive, that's what makes legends. Don't ever lose that. Michael nodded, tears in his eyes. Now go to bed. Tomorrow we start building the Jackson 5, and you're going to show the world what I just saw. The next morning at breakfast, Joe made an announcement. We're making some changes to the group. Michael's joining full-time, and he's taking lead on most songs. Jackie looked surprised but nodded. Tito and Jermaine exchanged glances. Any questions? Joe asked. Can Michael even reach the microphone? Tito asked. We'll get him a box to stand on, Joe said. Trust me, you're about to see something special. At their next rehearsal, Joe introduced the new formation, Michael front and center, brothers providing harmony and backup dancing. All right, Michael, show them what you've got. And Michael did. Within 3 months, the Jackson 5 was the most talked about act in Gary, Indiana. Within a year, they were performing in Chicago. Within 5 years, they were signed to Motown. But it all started with those secret nights in the basement. Years later, in a 1993 interview, Oprah asked Michael about his work ethic. You're known for practicing more than anyone in the industry. Where did that come from? Michael smiled. When I was 6 years old, I taught myself something important. Nobody was going to give me what I wanted. I had to take it, and the only way to take it was to work when nobody was watching, to practice when nobody was listening, to perfect my craft when the world was asleep. Did your father know about this? Eventually. He caught me one night. I thought I was in trouble. But instead, he gave me my first real chance. He saw that I wasn't just talented, I was committed. And commitment is what separates people who dream from people who achieve. After Michael's death in 2009, Katherine Jackson found something in Michael's Neverland Ranch. A small photograph, faded and worn, tucked inside his personal journal. The photo showed a young Michael, maybe 6 or 7, standing in a basement in his pajamas. Someone had taken it without him knowing. On the back, in Joe Jackson's handwriting, were these words. 3 hours a.m., October 1964. The night I realized I wasn't raising a performer. I was watching a legend being born. He thought no one was watching. But I saw everything. Katherine cried when she read it. Because it proved something about Joe that people often forgot. He was tough, demanding, sometimes too hard. But he recognized greatness when he saw it, and he knew enough to get out of its way. The story of Michael's secret practice reminds us of something crucial about success. Talent is common, discipline is rare. Thousands of kids had talent in Gary, Indiana, but only one was willing to sacrifice sleep, comfort, and childhood itself to practice in a cold basement at 2 a.m. when nobody was watching. That's not talent. That's obsession. That's dedication. That's the difference between good and legendary. Michael Jackson didn't become the king of pop because someone made him practice. He became the king of pop because he made himself practice. When he was 6 years old, in secret, every single night, for 5 months, before anyone even knew he was serious. The next time you hear someone say, I wish I had their talent, remember this story. Because talent didn't make Michael Jackson. Those secret hours did. The hours when he could have been sleeping but chose to be growing. The hours when no one was watching but he was still performing. The hours that built the foundation for everything that came after. Joe Jackson froze in that hallway because he realized he wasn't watching a child practice. He was watching the future of music being written in real time by a 6-year-old in pajamas who wanted it more than sleep itself. If this incredible story of hidden dedication moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that thumbs up button. Share this with someone who needs to remember that legends aren't born. They're built in the hours when nobody's watching. Have you ever worked on something in secret just because you loved it that much? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to turn on notifications for more amazing true stories about what it really takes to become extraordinary.